Good morning. This is Mackenzie Franklin from SideGame LLC here in Colorado Springs, Colorado. And today we're doing our crowdfunding for November 7th, 2021. Now we're going to be looking at 3 games, 2 that are currently on crowdfunding platforms, and then 1 that is a crowdfunding delivery that we've taken a look at and got a lot of time to play and enjoy. Now, that being said, the first game we're going to be covering today is the titular Lords of Ragnarok here. So Lords of Ragnarok is a new project over on Gamefound, over by Awakened Realms, and here is going to be a sequel to Lords of Hellas. Now, Lords of Hellas, I'll be straight up with you, is not a game that I was completely enamored with, but I'm going to first give you an opinion here on just what I see from this campaign coming from somebody that may not have seen it before. So right off the bat, it is a Nordic-themed game of area control where you play as a leader of a group of Vikings. So you are a Viking yourself, and you're going to be sending your boat around this large land and then delivering troops of Vikings onto the board. So each of your characters is going to have some sort of special ability on the hero itself, and you'll be interacting with things on the board, things like these runestones that you'll be collecting to take additional actions, or you'll also be collecting potential powers of these different monsters. So there's an action in the game where you can actually claim and control the different monsters at your fingertips. So these different creatures are going to give you abilities. Now, this game does some really cool things, and it kind of twists the formula on the original Lords of Hellas, where you are going to be not only controlling monsters, fighting for areas, but you actually get to slay monsters as well. But there's a cool dynamic here where, in addition to slaying monsters and that being a win condition, you kind of also don't want to, because if you control them, that's going to give you an edge in battle. And I really like that system. So there's a bit more incentive to keeping monsters alive because you get to use them for your own good, or there's an incentive to defeating them because not only are you doing this alternate win condition, but you're also going to be able to push forward and hurt your opponent's strategies. So I really like the way that they've twisted and changed the monster effects in this game. So that's another huge change. The other cool change they've added is the way the game ends, and that has to do with the Ragnarok. So there are going to be some endgame conditions similar to something like Vindication, except once a couple of them are fulfilled, then the game is going to be over right then and there. So that's a really cool feat because you have all these different timers triggering, and then once that endgame happens, the board state is going to be what it is when it's over. And I really like that idea. It's a player-controlled timer. Some people will like that, some people won't, but I think it's a great change to this game. Now, I think that the biggest strength that this game has going to it, though, is that monster system. My biggest issue in the original game was that the paths were not as interconnected as I'd like. If you had somebody focusing on the area control portion, a lot of the times they would usually win just because it was something that was completely set off from the monster battling section. And that was kind of frustrating because you had to stop what you were doing to do this other thing. And the game kind of pushes you and encourages you and says, hey, you could do anything you want, but really you can't because you got to make sure that you're doing this. Otherwise, these other people will win. And so it was kind of a weird it's a weird place to be in this game. The other issue with the original game was you had to focus primarily on stopping the other players from kill stealing you when it came to the monsters. And they've done a great job to actually remedy this in this game. Whenever you attack a creature, if you have done at least 4 damage to it, even if you don't get the final kill, it also counts as you defeating the monster, which I think is such a good way to do this. So you can still be opportunistic and kill steal and get those extra points, but if you are getting all the bonuses and hitting them beforehand, you're still going to get rewarded towards that win condition. So I really like that that system exists, and it encourages you to actually go after the monsters, and it can also encourage multiple people to go for it. So I think it's really neat. You could also do a weird thing where you may be controlling a monster and you can attack your own monster just to claim that victory point. So I think that's kind of interesting to see how that could play out. So there's obviously, if you're going to be going for this game, there's a lot of content for it. You're going to get these huge monuments. You're going to get these huge gods that you're going to be able to draw their power. The last thing that I want to mention, though, that's the big difference between this game and the original is the rune system. So there are going to be these places of power on the board where you're going to be wanting to place your characters. And once you reach there, you can actually use those runes to take special actions. So you're trying to get different sets of runes with different symbols. They're going to allow you to take extremely powerful actions. But realistically, the big thing is you want these matching rune symbols towards certain spaces on the board. So you're going to have different actions you can take based on those symbols. So I think that it's very sound in the new changes and the new mechanics. However, that could play into the downtime because you have this additional layer of complexity when it comes to those rooms. A very simple layer, but definitely something that's going to take some time to think about. There's those rune tokens there. So that is the game, the changes. Ultimately, it's this large area control game where you have multiple victory conditions, and you're trying to fulfill those before the end of the game, and then it's whoever has done them the best by the end. So I think that's a very interesting approach to this. I don't know if this is one that I will be backing. As I said before, the original Lords of Hellas is not one that I was super enamored with, but if this theme speaks to you, this might be one that it's worth checking out for you. Also, if you enjoy the original Lords of Hellas, this might be one that you jump into. The other thing that this game has over the original Lords of Hellas is that it has a very high focus on the lower player counts as well, which I think is really, really welcome. The original, it's pretty much best with 4. But the newer one here, you can actually play extremely well, all the way from 1 to 4. So I like that they have put a focus in that, which is really neat. So those are my kind of opinions and thoughts on Lords of Hellas to start with. But that being said, let's go ahead and jump to the next game. So the next game here is Marvel Dice Throne. Marvel Dice Throne is the Marvel reskin of the popular Dice Throne series. So Dice Throne is a head-to-head combat style game that employs the Yahtzee mechanism. So on your turn, you're going to be drawing cards, gaining these CP, these combat points, and then using those cards to do special actions or to upgrade your board, and then rolling dice in order to actually do damage and attack the opponents. You have a board in front of you with all these different slots. You have some that are usually attack cards, not attack cards, attack abilities, and then you also have some that are going to be these. Oh, I can go back here. There we go. So you're going to have some that are attack spots, and then you're also going to have some that are defense spots. So you're going to have the ability to be able to do defensive roles. And it makes a lot of sense. So the system is solid. The system is sound. Oh, it is not loading here. Let me refresh this. So the system is solid. The system is sound. If you've played the original Dice Throne, this is going to be just more of what you enjoy already. For me, unfortunately, I did not actually like the original Dice Throne very much. This is a head-to-head combat style game where you are rolling dice, drawing cards, and using abilities to whittle down your opponent's life points to 0. And that's the whole plan. Good morning, Mom Gamer. Well, good to have you this morning. So that's the plan here, is to whittle down your opponent's health by rolling dice combos. Now the presentation, I'll just go ahead and say, is gorgeous. I love the artwork here. I love the abilities. I love the presentation. I love how you have this little container and you pull it open. It is gorgeous. I love the way it's done this. They do this in Kingdom Rush 2. It's just extremely well done. So I really like that. Now, unfortunately, the big thing that really pushes me away from this game is the rolling dice and upgraded abilities and action cards. And honestly, it's really the action cards. So in this game, it's kind of a standard trading card game where at the start of your turn, you're drawing a card from the top of your deck, and then you will use your action points to play the cards that you've received. Now, some of the cards are upgrades, so you can actually replace the cards on your board with better versions. Some are action cards that may stop an opponent's card or allow you to re-roll, set a die face. A lot of them deal with the mechanics themselves, and some of them will just give you extra action points or extra card draw or things like that. When I played this game, I've played it maybe 5 times or 4 times. I have a friend that really likes this game. Whenever I play this game, it always felt to me that the cards that you're drawing were really determining if you were going to win. That in combination with how well you roll the dice. Because some of these upgrade abilities are just clearly better. And it really felt bad when you had a board of, these very standard abilities and the opponent had the better versions. And so they had more options with their dice to do more efficient things. While you may have had an ability to turn one die to a different phase, which is great. Dice mitigation is solid, but in a rolling dice game, having just stronger effects, especially if you're trying to whittle down the opponents here, it's very, very unfortunate when that can happen. It just feels bad to play, in my opinion. And then the dice itself, so you'll have your play your action stuff phase, you'll have your roll dice phase. If you roll well on that first roll, it's smooth sailing, because then you can pick and choose and you have lots of time to think about, okay, which of these abilities am I going to use? If you upgraded your abilities, you're even stronger there. It's so interesting because the game seems like it's so straightforward, so simple, and it is, but the different choices that you're making ultimately come down to those cards you're drawing. And if you just draw better cards, it can kind of stink. There's not really a lot of interplay and decision. And my favorite thing in these dueling games is kind of predicting what your opponents may do or can do based on the cards in their hand. I played Yu-Gi-Oh for a long time and has a lot of that with like trap cards and whatnot. You have to predict and know timing, and oh man. So I'm curious. I don't know why this one is, when it's your turn, you sit there and you wait for the other person and then they do their thing and then you have a chance to defend. And if you roll poorly, you just roll poorly. And I think that's the best way to sum up my thoughts on this. If you have any opinions on this, I'd love to hear in the comments. Good morning, Indra. Thanks for being here this morning. And Mom Gamer says, yes, it does, but still love it though. And I understand it. This is very much a very relaxed, I roll my stuff, I deal damage. And if that's something that goes towards you, I totally get it. If I were to play a dueling game like this, I really like the new Sanctuary from, I think it's Artipia Games. It might be Artipia Games, but that game is really cool with the combat system. It's all lane based and it uses a similar action system, so I've enjoyed that quite a bit. I also really like I honestly prefer GOAT format Yu-Gi-Oh. I think it's a blast. You've got that same whittling down the life points, but that prediction element is there, and the decks are extremely balanced. And this one, some characters can be a little bit stronger than others. I remember we played like the monk versus there's one that's a glass cannon. It's like a fire mage, and it was clear that there was no way this fire mage was going to be able to push through and deal damage to the other one. And Indra has a good comment here. If they had more mainstream characters, such as Iron Man, Captain America, they'd make more money. And I agree with that. They definitely are going for a diverse approach, I think is really cool. So they have some characters that maybe don't get as much spotlight as they normally do. So I like that they include Spider-Man and Scarlet Witch here. I think that's really neat. So they're getting a lot of different angles from all the different sides of the Marvel Cinematic Universe and comics universe. I think that's really neat. And they're also playing into a lot of the popular properties that are coming out right now, which makes sense. But I like that they have this big swath of characters, and I think that if they're saving these characters for season 2, which is definitely going to happen because this is making a lot of money, I think that's definitely going to get people to want to back it and continue. So I like that it is a little fresh with the characters they're going with. So I like this cast of characters personally. But I can also see why people would definitely want the originals, because I mean, it's Marvel. If you're buying it for the property, you probably want to see the characters that you like, and those characters, particularly Captain America and Iron Man, they are definitely going to bring in a lot of viewers and a lot of people. So those are my thoughts on Dice Throne and Lords of Ragnarok. If you have any opinions on these, please leave them in the comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. But now to talk about a game that we have played a lot of. We finished the first third of it and having a blast with it. I really think this game is good, and that is Middara, Unintentional Malum Act 1. So this is a recent Kickstarter delivering, and when I say recent, it got here in the middle of the summer, but we finally played through about a third of it now and got a lot of game time in. And it's wonderful. So this is a huge JRPG style game where it's cooperative in nature, it's campaign driven, and the book for reading it is thick. But there's a really cool app called Foreteller where it's free. It comes with the game. And if you bring out this Foreteller app, it's going to allow you to have everything read to you, which is awesome because as you're playing, while you're setting up a scenario, which are very much easier to set up than things like Gloomhaven or things like that. There's a couple of tokens here and there, but it uses these big map tiles. But as you're setting up, you can put on the narration in the background, listen to it, and by the time it's done, you're ready to go. And I think that's really, really neat. So you have lots of cool ways to kind of tie in all your downtime into one thing and have a great experience. So I kind of like the flow of that style of game. It works really well. But the key feature here in Middara is the dice feature. So every time you enter a new map, you're kind of moving your character around and doing damage, but you're using these dice to take actions. So the dice have different rarities here. I just talked about this on our most recent dice-driven board games, the top list there. And when you roll the dice, they'll have these symbols that appear. Think of it something similar to Imperial Assault, where you're going to be using those symbols to trigger special abilities. A lot of the times they're going to have to do with extra damage, maybe special effects on that damage, like piercing and whatnot. It's really, really solid. Ah, that's right. I remember you had your copy stolen. Ah, that's terrible. I'm so sorry to hear that, Mom Gamer. I hope that you get a chance to play it soon. Have you reached out to the company at all? I don't know. I don't know how they would handle something like that, but that's just super unfortunate. So the dice system here is very straightforward, very cool, and I love the way that it upgrades over time, how you're getting better dice and you're upgrading to these better abilities. Now, in addition to your dice abilities and the abilities on the items you're using, you also will have characters that have these traits, and each character has some special ability tied to them. So this character, for example, Remy here, she has the ability to fly. So every turn, you're going to be getting these action points, which is little circles. You can have up to 5, and you can spend them to do different things. Attack, dodge. This character can fly, which is so awesome. And I like that you're using a kind of cast of characters as you play. Now, as it seems, I don't know yet, but I'm pretty sure as you play, you're going to be adding new members to your party. Like I said, we're only about a third of the game in. So I would say like 20 scenarios in, which is kind of crazy because that's only a third. But it seems that you're going to be adding more characters to your party and you'll be able to switch them out. But I would recommend you keep Remy all the time because flying is just so ridiculous. There's a lot of objectives where you just need to reach an exit or pick up a couple of items or something like that. And just being able to zip around the map is super, super useful. So I really like her. But in addition to your character's action points, abilities, you also have health, defense, movement stats. And then you have these extra icons for like skill checks and stuff. So if you're climbing over a bridge or trying to catch someone, one of my favorite things in this game is there are these empty caverns. So like they're dangerous zones of the game. If you are jumping across a crevasse, you can do that, and it can be really scary because if you whiff, you fall and you die, and you're just out of the scenario. But if you have somebody on the other side, they can catch you. You can roll dice based on their agility or strength value, something like that. The person who's jumping is agility, and the person who's catching is strength. And I think that's really fun. It's a great little touch here. So I like the way that the characters work here. But the big feature of this game, in addition to the dice, are the items. So the items tied to the dice here, and each of them does something really, really cool. You have consumables, which give you extra effects, and then you'll have the extra items on the top here. Some will give you passive bonuses, some will give you exhaust bonuses. This is one of those games where as you play, you're just going to be exhausting stuff over and over again, and you're getting lots of effects at the start of your turn you unexhaust. So you have all these little things that as you play, you're going to get to build up, and then you're going to remember and be like, ooh, I have this, I can dodge for free, and if I dodge, I get to counter. It feels really, really good. I really like this one. We have a quick question from Mom Gamer. Been playing games since I was a child. I have been playing games since I was a kid. Most of the games I played as a kid were probably just the mass market stuff, so nothing extremely crazy. I played a lot of CCGs in like 2001, I think, is when we got into a lot of CCGs, and then started to play more modern board games when I was in college. So I had done really well at a bunch of Yu-Gi-Oh tournaments, and I spent a lot of store credit on board games, and I was just tried out a bunch of those, and I was like, well, this is way better. So I stopped playing my CCGs and jumped into board gaming. So did not get into modern gaming until 2014, I want to say. It's probably when I started to get into these. But yes, definitely. Same boat as you, played a lot of mass market games as a child. So very, very cool. So this one in particular, though, I really like the item system. I love the way it works. But my favorite feature actually has to do with the maps. So the way the maps are set up in this game are these giant tiles. Let me see if I can find a good picture for you. So these giant tiles are going to be placed on the board, and they have features pre-printed onto them, which, yes, it takes away from the customization of each of the maps, but also it's going to make it so that setup is a breeze. And I really appreciate that. I like being able to just throw some tiles on the board and be ready to go. So in particular, you're also going to have all these tokens that you litter the board with. And these tokens are going to be treasures. They're going to be, things you can interact with. And then there's also this really cool thing called totems. Now, totems are basically these triggers. They're motion sensors. If you have a character that moves into a totem, it'll trigger the effect of whatever that totem is. And that's really cool. It's a way to progress the game. This could be things like ambushes of monsters. It could be win conditions or extra rooms, exits. It could have you spawn another tile onto the board. It could change up the initiative order. Something could happen. It could be a story event. There's lots of cool things, and it's protected with this like red decoder thing, but it's just really well implemented. It keeps the clip of the game going well. It has you jumping into the scenario quickly, and it has a natural exploration feeling as you play. So kind of a summary of what I'm talking about here. The first thing I really like is I love the characters. I think that they are really cool. Their abilities make sense. They got this giant piece of art that's going to be in front of you can look at. I love customizing those characters. I love the different items. I love how you're going to be building up, and I love all of the different games that you're going to be tilting, and I love all of that different, the switches you get to pull. It feels really good. And then after that, I really like the map itself. So taking those characters, putting them on the map, and then the map works just extremely well. It's easy to play, easy to see, great art, very bright. It makes sense, and then the way that the game progresses throughout scene to scene just works really well. So I just like this arc of this game. You take your character, you have a good scenario, and you have a great time playing with it. And I haven't even touched on the monsters. The monsters are a little convoluted at first, but as you play, just like in a lot of these games, it's going to get easier to manage. Not as easy as something like, I would say that the monsters in Gloomhaven are pretty easy to manage, in my opinion, but it's also not as easy as like, what's the other one? Chronicles of Junagor is also very easy to manage. This one I think is probably the most complicated, which is funny because I would probably rate the complexity of this over the complexity in Kingdom Death Monster, which is kind of wild, but these are just like one card. So it's interesting. You have some trade-offs there, but I think you're going to be seeing a lot of the same enemy during the early scenario, so you'll get kind of comfortable with running them. So it feels better after you've played a while. So that'd be my biggest critique, is the monsters are a little convoluted to run sometimes. They take a while to play. And then I have a question here from Mom Gamer. What's the game that got me into gaming? For modern board gaming, I would probably say Seven Wonders, I want to say. So that was the first game that I had purchased, and actually was like, okay, this is going to be my board game purchase. We had Catan and we had played a lot of that. Just it was kind of like a family thing. We had that from families, but I think Seven Wonders was the first game I got that was like, ooh, I'm buying a game to play board games over other things. Like, this is what I want to play with. So I would say that it's going to be Seven Wonders. This was the 2014. I saw that it had like all these awards. I was like, oh my gosh, like, well, what are these board game awards? So good. So let's try this out. And it was a blast. This was one that we consistently played. We actually just got rid of that copy about a month ago. We just got rid of that copy to get the new edition because the cards were like falling apart. So I was like, okay, if we're going to be showing this off in the library and whatnot, we want to make sure that it's a nice version, sleeve it up, because that one was definitely not well taken care of. But had a great time. I really like Seven Wonders. I think our game is still really, really good. So that's a good one. And it was really funny because with that old copy, we had never played with like cities or leaders or any of those. So I actually got to try those for the first time, like last month, which is crazy because they seem so integral. Like, after playing with them once, it's like, oh my gosh, what have I been missing my whole life? So that's what got me into gaming. What got you into gaming? I'm curious. Mom Gamer Andrew, if you're here in the comments, anybody else joining us this morning, what game got you into gaming? So those are my thoughts on Middara. Those are my thoughts on Lords of Ragnarok and Marvel Dice Throne. Out of all those games, definitely, because I've played it, obviously, Middara is the one that I'm enjoying right now. But out of Dice Throne and Lords of Ragnarok, I think Lords of Ragnarok would probably be the one that I'd lean to if I was going to pick one to actually back and go for. Once again, these are probably two games that we're not going to be getting into the library. Once again, just the downtime and the features of the original Lords of Hellas, they're kind of dissuading me from jumping into this one. But I think that Marvel Dice Throne is only really good at that two-player experience, and even then, it's not one that I'd choose over any other dueling game. So those are my opinions on this. If you appreciate these and you've liked them already, I totally get it. I think that if you like this style, jump into it. I think you'll have a blast. But unfortunately, not ones that we're going to be adding to our library this time. But curious to hear what you think. If you have any opinions on these two, I'd love to hear them in the comments below. We're going to go ahead and open up the chat at this time to viewer comments, and let's go ahead and see what we've got. So Mom Gamer has her first game. This is Jaipur was the very first game. The rest is history. I love this game. I think it's so good. This was one of my brother's games that he started to play a lot with his wife. He actually showed it to me at Gen Con. We met there, and he's like, have you not played this game? And we picked it up, and this is a game that we played a lot while we were waiting in lines for some of the different games that were coming out. So I really like this one. I think I think it's fun. I think it's so straightforward, so simple. It gives me a lot of feelings of Splendor, where you're picking up these things and you're trading in tokens, in this case cards, for gems. I love the way that the camels work and the swinginess of that. Not necessarily like swingy from winning and losing, but like literally swinging a bunch of camels into the center and then pulling a bunch back. It feels so fun. So I really like Jaipur, and I'd like to see the new edition. With Vincent Dutrait artwork, sounds awesome. So awesome. Very, very happy for this. And then what is the story behind SideGame LLC? That's a big question. So the story behind SideGame has to do with my wife and I sitting in the car. I was really into gaming. It was something that I was really enjoying. And we were just thinking about how could we turn this passion into something that could be something that I could put my extra time into and grow. And ultimately monetize. And we are like, okay, let's figure this out. And so we thought about something that we had heard of. We heard that it was having good success in California and other areas of the United States, and that was game night hosting. So we had a friend that was doing that, and that was really, really cool. And it did not exist here in the spring. So I figured, okay, this is something we could do. We could provide this service and like kind of maximize our quality of our stuff and make it something that you want to bring us here. It doesn't have to be the mainstay. It could be something like, an entertainer, a magician, or something along the like, where they kind of are there and there's something that you can do on the side, and so it's your side game. You could do that, and it was a cool idea. We started, unfortunately, right when we started, the pandemic hit hard, and it was very hard to get going. So doing that and trying to figure out the best ways to approach that, and then from there we wanted to figure out, okay, we need to get some recognition to this. We need to do something while we're on while we're on lockdown, because we can't really do any of the game night hosting right now. Just we're not allowed to. So we focused on the YouTube stuff, and so I started doing that, and just I figured the best way to do that was to reach out, and so we reached out for a lot of people, and it worked. It worked well. I mean, if we're doing really well right now, we just got to 1,400, I think, yesterday subscribers, which is really, really cool. That's awesome. I really can't say thank you enough. This is really, really awesome. I love sharing everything with everybody here and just having a blast with this. And that being said, we're actually continuing to evolve our system here. So my wife and I had talked about potentially changing up our business model a little bit to not only do the board gaming personally, physically, but also doing digitally. So she thought that a cool idea would be to do something like a virtual game night hosting. And I thought, okay, that's a really cool idea, but I feel like that would be really hard. The game selection would be very small. This would be very difficult. And then we actually had a viewer of the show. I'm not going to list any names here. He came to me with a suggestion about potentially doing a online teaching session, and I thought that was really cool. So I'm actually doing that tomorrow, so I hope that it goes well, and that might become a new pillar of our business model, is doing online like demos and tutorials on games. So it's a very interesting story. It started from just like a trip in a car, but now we're here, and I feel like it's just evolving in a very natural way, and it just makes sense. So I'm curious to see where we go with this, if this is something that continues to grow, and I would like it to. This is something I'm having a blast doing. um, yeah, I really enjoy this. I like talking about games. I like playing games. I don't know if you've seen our most recent what we've been playing, but I play a lot of games. So it's like I just like talking about the things that I like doing. It's fun. This is great, and I feel like I have pretty good opinions on this. I feel like I have a pretty good exposure to a lot of different things. So, and then coming from this perspective of, is this going to be a good game to share with other people? So that's where I'm at with Side Game. Good question, Mom Gamer. Thank you for being here this morning again, and thank you for all your support. So awesome. And we have Sean here. He's got a suggestion. Oh, right here. Back Too Many Bones, Unbreakable at $1, since he's never played the series, but have been interested and purchased Undertow, Gilly, and Nugget. Excellent idea. So I think that this is an excellent idea in order to get started and like the game. If you do like it, should you get the Trove chest? If you like the game, yes. I love the Trove chest. I think it's so fun. I definitely don't think you need it. The storage in the base game is fine. I actually did a video with Alex over at Board Game Co., and he said that that game needed an organization system, and I disagreed. I think that the stuff that comes in the box actually works well, because you have all these dice trays, and it's just a bunch of mats. The biggest thing is not as pretty, and that's really the biggest thing. I don't think you actually need any of the Trove chests, but if this is going to become a collector's piece and something that you jump into a lot, then you might get it just for that and that alone. But otherwise, it'll all fit in 2 boxes. We had ours in 2 boxes before we got the Trove chest, so you don't really need it. But if you want to go the extra mile, I think that it would work. It works well. It's something that we have literally in one of our IKEA boxes, and you just slide it open and just start pulling things out, which is nice because you never have to take it off the shelf. And you take it piecemeal, which works really well. But you definitely don't need it because the organization system works well. Chip Theory Games does a really good job with their plastic containers. So I don't think you need the Trove chest, but if you really like the game, get the Trove chest, because it's the most extra thing that we have, in my opinion. Even more extra than the Death May Die mini, or I think it's super extra. But if you are about to start this game and you purchased Undertow, my recommendation is you actually start this game with either Duster or with Nugget. I think that those 2 characters are probably going to be the most simple in complexity to get started with, and I hope that you have a blast. I love this game. Oh, I love it. And Indra has a great comment. The only board game you can play underwater. You can play Cloudspire underwater too. So that's another one. Pretty much any of those Chip Theory products. Hop Optimist would work too. Some fun stuff. Or I don't think Game to Pick a Game would work. And then Mom Gamer, great story, wonderful. Thank you so much. I'm hoping that people are enjoying this content I'm putting out, and I'm having a fun time doing it. Taking a break here and there when I need to, but whew. And that's a great question. How many games are in the Side Game library? Let's find out really quick. Let me get you a number. So I'll jump on to BGG really quick, and let's find out together, shall we? So naturally, we did a lot of culling like over the years, because there was like one Gen Con where we just bought a bunch of games, and after playing them a while, we ended up getting rid of a lot of games. So we've done a lot of culling. We're pretty aggressive at it. Unfortunately, though, we've like got to a point where most of these games we have now are pretty dang good. The only games that we have that are like sevens are, there's a lot of party games that a lot of other people like that are pretty low rated, but other than that, most of the games that we have are 8s and above, which is pretty cool. All right, so this is let's filter so it's only the stuff that we own right now. Own. All right, you ready for your answer? Apply filters. All right, so we have 367 games in the SideGame library, and that's with getting rid of a lot of games. So 367. That's our. I'll put it in the comments here. 67 games in the library. Okay, so we have a lot. There's a lot of games here. Every game that we have is fully expanded. Every game that we have is fully upgraded and fully sleeved. And I think that's a really cool thing about our just collection in general. I think that's really cool. We can, if we're bringing a game, it's going to be the best version of that game, which I think is really awesome. I'm trying to think if there's anything that we're missing, any big gaps. I don't think so. Right now, the biggest thing in our library that I would say that we're waiting on are just games that don't exist right now. So a lot of things that are coming through Kickstarters. That's the only thing that we're missing, which is nice. So generally, when I look at it, it's kind of funny because I'll look at a game store or I look at like a sale of games, and people are like, "Oh, this game's on sale." I'm like, I don't really want any games, which is kind of neat. I'm only focused on, it's unfortunate. I'm only focused on like pre-orders and things that are coming in now. But it's really interesting because I'm not ever looking for sales or ever looking for things that are already out, which is kind of nice. So generally, if I am playing a game that's already out, I'm playing it at somebody else's place, and then if it's good at that point, that's when I will search it and find it. But other than that, we're trying to do more gambling on like the future stuff to see if it's something that's going to be worth backing. A lot of the times it turns out okay, because if we do back something, we usually go all in, so we're able to get rid of it at a pretty decent price without a really bad cost to us. So it works out well. Yeah, I'm having a good time with this. It's fun. I like rolling the dice and trying to see if any of these new Kickstarter games are going to be good, but I got to make some good judgments here. And then we have another question from Indra here. Are you backing Monsterpocolypse? Not right now. My friend Dan gave me kind of like a rundown on this. He says that he didn't really like the first edition. This second edition has some good changes, so I'm curious. I may look into it more. This might feature on the next crowdfunding. So I'm not sure if this is one that I do want to pull the trigger on, though. So mainly based on the opinions of people who have played the originals and who have looked at this new edition. So that's where I'm at with Monsterpocolypse, Indra. But thank you for asking. That's a good question. All right, we'll leave the chat up for about another 30 seconds here, and then we'll call it for this morning. Anybody have any cool plans for this weekend, for the rest of their Sunday, for this upcoming week? Any games that you've been playing? So recently, some games that I've been playing. Oh, so I've been playing some Terraforming Mars, some Boon Lake. Oh man, I'm super excited. We've got some good stuff going on. And Mom Gamer has a great comment here. Going to go to Essen next year. If you do, going to grab you a couple games if you would like that. That would be amazing. I'm actually considering going to Essen next year as well. So we'll see what happens with it. It depends on our situation here and how well the company's growing. If it's still doing well, then I think that we could use that as a business expense, because we would literally just be putting it back into the company, right? So I think that would be cool. And if I do go to Essen, I'd love to meet up. That'd be super fun to do some cool meetups and try out some of these new games. I am pretty timid about trying games at conventions, though, because I know that it's not the ideal experience. Having to learn a game on the fly is pretty painful for everybody involved. So maybe reserve it for like a small games, or maybe play some favorites that we enjoy. But I would love to do something like that in the future. So particularly Essen, having the extra time to work on reviews and having those games for people to play before anybody else is pretty it's pretty enticing, right? Like you see, oh, this company has these games, I can go play them right now before they're available, try them out. I think that's ideal. It's really cool. So I'm curious to see what happens, and I think that'd be really awesome. So super cool. And then Indra says, recently got human interface, become a better human. People say it's bad, but we'll see. Got it for cheap. All right. I hope that it turns out to be a good game. This is actually one that I've heard a small bit of buzz about, nothing too crazy, but I hope that it's good for you. I know that sometimes cheap games are ones that I stay away from because usually they're cheap for a reason, but that's not always the case. I know that Game Nerds has really cool deals of the day that are super good. So like I think they were selling Coimbra the other day for like something ridiculous, like $35 or $30, which is awesome. So if you can find great games for cheap, go for it. Jump on it. That's the time to grab them. So super cool. I hope it's a great game, Indra. And absolutely, Mom Gamer, I would love to do a meetup. That'd be so fun. All right, I'll leave it up for another 15 seconds or so. You see all right? And then today, I'm actually planning on playing the new expansions for Western Legends. So hopefully that'll be the one that we cover on the next crowdfunding. So it's the Blood Money expansion. It adds some deeds where you can actually own the spots on the boards, a new story system, lots of new cards, new items, new ways to manage the legendary items. It just looks like a lot of fun. I put up the organizing video for it. It's going to be up there, I think tomorrow, actually, either tomorrow or Tuesday. So super excited to jump into this and try it. I like playing at the lower player counts because the downtime in that game could be killer. So we're playing a 3-player game of it today. So super excited. It'll be great. I'm thrilled. I'm ready to go. But thank you so much for being here this morning and for watching. Please, once again, in the comments, share your thoughts on the games that we've been talking about, on Lords of Ragnarok, on all of these new Dice Throne characters in the Marvel Universe. And if you're enjoying and playing Middara, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. But thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for watching. Side Game Strong, everybody. Bye.